Hello and welcome to Score Tech Rants. No, we're not gonna do
Yeah,
that.
I guess that's what we're calling this. So we both saw the rock paper shotgun interview with
And
Molyneux.
yeah, with Molyneux, and we read it with Peter Molyneux, and we kind of started running our mouths after we finished recording First Encounter just now, and then we just figured, why don't we record this too? Why as well?
Yeah, like because if we're going to say stupid shit, let's put it on camera so the world can call us on it.
Yeah, can mock us later, just dig up our dirt when we're famous.
Yeah, that's exactly the plan. We're giving them ammunition, so it will be a fair fight.
Yeah.
Okay, so my first thought reading this interview is that like either Molyneux comes across as he always does, like a bit of an idiot, but like a dreamer who doesn't really like ever. He avoids reality checks, it seems, and John Walker like comes off as his accusatory style comes off as either really
My problem with that opening of "Are you a pathological liar?" is that essentially you've just tainted the pool. You just like ruined the interview, and that remark is gonna go through the entire thing and shape all the answers and everything. It's not gonna press anyone. It's just gonna leave.
It's one thing if that's like a fair accusation, but it's like
It's not. I don't think it's.
I feel like it's dishonest, and if it's not dishonest, it's very like, God, I'm so bad at remembering words this week. What's wrong with me? It just seems like you're being very, very dishonest about it when you open like that. Because do you really think that Molyneux is a pathological liar? Like, has he ever kind of come across as the cold-hearted guy who just like lies about the features of the game? I don't think he does. Like, he's talking about games in development, and he's talking about what he wants them to be and what he thinks they will be. And he's a dreamer. He has never been one to reality check himself. You've seen this across his entire career. Like, he just talks a storm about everything he's doing and what he wants it to be, and he talks about it as if it was already a reality. If you haven't read this interview yet, go do that first. It's on Rock Paper Shotgun. We should probably put a link here,
Yeah,
so you know what we're talking about.
There's an annotation right now, and it's in the description too.
Yeah.
Honestly, my entire take of this is I don't think Molyneux is a liar. I think he is a person that severely overestimates his capacity and how people will react to his promises. I mean, it's like he has this idea how he wants the game to be made, and probably with his current knowledge, he figures, oh, we can do that. But he is still a game designer, and he has to consult the rest of the team and then figure out, does this work? And then unpredictable stuff happens. But I think the crux, the real issue of that interview is, like, Molyneux did a bunch of stupid stuff, and he was called out on it recently. But in that particular interview, he is being held accountable for things that just happen in game development as an issue. He wasn't held accountable for the mistakes he actually made. So
I think that's one part of it. Like, I do think that it is kind of dishonest to hold him accountable for delays and stuff, but it's like, that happens to all games, and like, Kickstarter really puts game development there in the spotlight in such a way that you start seeing the problems more in a way that the public isn't used to really being exposed to this sort of stuff. And I mean, I honestly think that the public has to have a bit of patience. Like, I'm not one that's like defending people who misuse Kickstarter and abuse it, because, and I think that's the interesting conversation to have here. We can talk all about like how Young Walker said this and Molyneux said that, and I think it was a needlessly confrontative interview and all that. But I think the interesting part is the attitudes it shows in regards to Kickstarter.
yeah, and it's also horrible because he says to Molyneux, I mean, he mentioned how, oh, why did you ask for less money on your Kickstarter as a goal, uh, if that wasn't enough for to make the entire game? And he essentially did say, oh, we expected more, and we basically gave. He didn't say those words, but he basically implied that they gamed the system because if you don't have the minimum amount that Kickstarter requires, you get no money, and they just figured, okay, it's better to have some of the money than none of the money. And
Like I think the idea wasn't even to get past the Kickstarter money like limit. I think the idea is that if you have a lower amount you are asking for, people are more likely to pledge.
yes, and also in addition to all of that, when you share the actual costs of developing a game, people will just tell you, no, I don't believe that's true. I mean, here's another example. Harebrained Schemes, the guys who did Shadowrun, on their most recent Shadowrun, one of the stretch goals was, okay, if we get, what was it? If we get like twice as much, I'm not sure the exact amount, but if they get a high enough amount over their original goal, they will be able to update, improve the game, improve the quality of the game, and add like 4 more hours. And this was like if they were asking for $100,000, and then this was like twice as much, but it didn't improve the game it didn't make it twice as long. It just improved it by 4 hours, and people were complaining, oh, the mathematics doesn't add up. Why are you asking the same much as the base value to increase the game only by 25%? And it just shows that people don't understand how game development works because it isn't like essentially just adding content. It's like increasing fidelity and everything. But people don't understand that. They just look at
Yeah,
the numbers.
I think people have a fundamental misunderstanding of how
Budgeting
how
works.
much game development costs.
It's
Like
super
you saw
expensive.
that with Gamergate reacting to Tim Schafer's like numbers for how much money it costs to develop Broken Age, and like breaking down what the cost of an employee is, and like all the other like costs
Yeah.
other than the salary that ends up adding up to the end cost being almost twice the salary per employee. And it's just it goes, there's so much money that goes into this.
Yeah.
Programmers are expensive, artists are expensive.
No,
espe-
and especially in like 22 Kansas in the UK, the amount of pay per person there is much higher than some other country.
Like or for example where Double Fine is located.
Yeah, yeah.
Like their specific area is very expensive, but it's like the attitude where with like John Walker asking questions in regards to like people who didn't get the product yet, shouldn't they have the money back? No, because Kickstarter is not a store. Kickstarter is a platform where you can ship in and help get a project off the ground, and if it's completed satisfactory, you can get a reward. But that is not. If the reward is your main purpose for backing a Kickstarter, like, I'm sorry, you should not be backing this Kickstarter.
How it seems to me in this entire situation, and I'm stealing this observation from someone else on Twitter, but I think it's really true. Kickstarter, like you said, it has this purpose. But when all of a sudden all these games came with the promise of delivering a game without publisher meddling, people jumped in on that, and the media jumped in on that, and communities jumped into that, and everybody started forging this new idea of how Kickstarter should work and what Kickstarter should offer. And what Molyneux did, in my opinion, was the same thing that a bunch of other Kickstarter games did. The only thing is, he's one of the first ones to fail that badly with a high profile.
And put it this way, he hasn't even like completely failed yet.
Yeah.
The development has continued. He has just under fire because of other shitty things that happened around that game. But I think that it's definitely true that Peter Molyneux is not, and 22 Cans it's not the only studio that has used Kickstarter like this. In fact, I think it has become the norm.
Yeah, and that's a problem. And that's a problem because one of the things that Molyneux said is, if you fail at Kickstarter, it's not just about the money. It's also about the press buzz that you get, because we all see how much press Kickstarter projects get. It's really insane, and media attention, PR attention, that means a lot. That means a real lot. And how many games have you? It's a problem with early access too. How many games have you seen that are either kickstarted or in early access, and they're only written about, at that time, and when they're completed, it kind of goes a bit under the radar unless it's a really high profile game, but it usually goes under the radar.
That's become the norm, and it's weird. But like I think honestly, I think one of the big problem is that when you have run Kickstarters that start offering exclusive rewards to backers and like almost treating it as a pre-order with pre-order DLC and stuff, and like exclusive backer rewards to left and right, and just all these things to encourage consumers to treat it like a store. They will start treating it like a store, and once they start treating it like a store, they will get pissed if something is not as you promised. Like if you said, oh, this Kickstarter stretch goal will mean that we do this, and then you start developing the game and you figure out that, oh, this isn't actually viable, and you drop that, that's a huge deal for all the people. People will get pissed off. So, like, stop treating Kickstarter like a store. You are encouraging consumers to act really entitled about it because they start treating it like a store, and then they start treating it like a product they paid for instead of a project they are helping make happen.
I mean, if you're going that far, then you might as well go with the publisher, because the publisher understands the production process of a game. Yeah, sure, like, it's risky and it's constrained, but it's I don't think it's objectively better to be crowdfunded as opposed to being published, because if you're crowdfunded, and we have this situation now, maybe it wasn't the original intent of Kickstarter, maybe that's not how things went, but right now, how it's working is, yes, people are treating it as a product, and, it's this typical capitalist mentality of, I paid money for this, I own you. Like, people feel that when they pay for subscriptions in MMOs, let alone when they back something on Kickstarter. And
totally. It's like the underserved sense of entitlement that people have, and especially in gaming, is a problem overall. But don't fucking encourage it. Please, for the love of everything, can we please not encourage this? Can we please step away a bit and not try to game the system in such a way and try to convince people to treat it like a store? Because when they treat it like a store, they will treat you like if they bought your product from a store. And they will get pissed when you delay it. They will get pissed when you change things. They will get pissed if you have to go back and ask for more money.
It's like getting circular, because developers started making Kickstarter work like this because consumers started paying like this, and because media started pandering to this form of developing games and started like reporting more on it, and because media has limited time, you can't highlight everything, and then they won't highlight something twice, and then you have this risk, which we already said, and then this goes into a circle and just keeps happening, and I don't think that Molyneux was the one who like started it or the one who's ending it. He was just like in the middle, and he was one of the first major issues to be brought up. There were other problematic Kickstarters, but since he's Molyneux, he is a person, it's easier to kind of visualize and say, point the finger. Yeah. And now you're holding him accountable for an environment that you created. Like, I agree that what he did, how he used Kickstarter, is the wrong way to use it. But everybody's
wrong for the same reason everyone else is as well. Like, in this case, the actual Kickstarter use is not more problematic than everyone else, but he's getting shit for it because it's Molyneux. And before someone jumps down our throats for being, oh, Molyneux's fanboys, no, I fucking cannot stand the way this guy makes games and the way he talks about them in public. I have had a problem with him for a long time, but this is not a Molyneux problem.
This is not, thing. Yeah, this is becoming a Molyneux problem, and it isn't. I mean, I played Black and White, I played some of the old Syndicate, I kind of like those games, but I'm not a Molyneux fan. I like some of his ideas, but those are just ideas. He never goes through with it. But what it boils down to is he should have been held. I mean, I think if you're gonna do an interview with him, you should hold him accountable for some other crap he did, like not calling the kid that won the Curiosity Prize, just like keeping him out of the loop.
In John Walker's defense, he does call him out for some of this, but by calling him out for everything you can possibly grasp at, you're going to just look like you're trying to grasp at anything to get at him, which it seems like it is what John Walker is trying to do. And I don't understand it, because John Walker seems like a guy who cares. He seems like a guy who tries to do the right thing most of the time. So why this?
I don't know. I don't personally get it. It feels like all that vitriol just spiked the entire interview, and you couldn't get a legitimate answer. I think he was trying to crack Molyneux because he had the opportunity to actually get proper answers, and Molyneux, I mean, he is pretty hard to actually get proper answers from, and he wanted to grab that opportunity. That's just my theory. It might not be true, but he started. I mean, it feels like he has no insight in how game development works in general, because
John Walker, right?
Yeah, John Walker. Yeah, John Walker doesn't have any insight in how game development works, because all those things that Molyneux complained about, project delays, changing stuff, removing features, adding features, some inane stuff turning out to be complicated. I mean, I've been working as a game designer for less than a full year, and I've encountered all those things in some capacity. And I've read others' accounts from other developers. It happens. It's absolutely the most run-of-the-mill thing that has to happen in games.
Yeah, everything with games goes wrong. Nothing works as on paper. You have to redesign everything countless times before you have a finished product.
Where Molyneux, I think, stumbled was how he actually handled those issues when they did arise. But also, but he also said that he didn't want to be, he didn't want to be too much communicative about that, because in the end, this always happens. I mean, he is aware of his reputation and how people view him. He isn't that stupid.
He is totally, and like, as much as I feel like he is taking the wrong lessons from the reaction, when you get John Walker coming in and just like going full on attack. Like, I can understand why he feels he needs to withdraw. And honestly, he probably should. Like, not to be mean to him, but his development studio needs a public face that can actually knows how to communicate with the public. Peter Molyneux is not the public face who knows how to do that.
Yeah, honestly, it's one of those situations where a lot of people complain about PRs in video games, but you need a PR blast shield, even if it's sounds a bit soulless. You kind of need someone to protect you from basic stuff. You need your bicycle padlock.
There are in this who can handle it. There are people who can handle it themselves, and like those are heroes in my book. Like, people who can handle that side of things and interface with the media really well are goddamn the heroes. Like the superhero people who have superpowers. That's not what normal people can do. Media is fucking harsh to handle, and if you are not trained in how to do it, it goes wrong.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think the John Walker versus Molyneux side this is the interesting side. Like, the interesting side is the attitudes the conversation betrays about how we view game development and how we view Kickstarter in particular. And I think Kickstarter has a huge problem, because if you're a developer going to Kickstarter, you either have the choice between like being super vague and like trying to hold on to your freedoms to develop as you want, or promise very specific things really early in development. And if you try to be super vague, you're going to probably have more trouble raising funds. And if you be super specific, you're going to end up disappointing people who view this as a store. So where do you go with it?
Yeah, and the problem is, a specific problem to games might be, is unlike, I mean, they're expensive to prototype, they have more complex systems than most board games, which are easy to present, or books, or music projects, or whatever. A lot of stuff you can actually plan out and say, okay, this is how it's gonna go, and then the changes won't impact it too much. But for a game, you can put it all on paper, you can try the prototype, and then 3 months in development, you can realize, okay, this feature we planned, it's not working good, and for the sake of the game, we have to remove it because it's a good decision on a larger scale. And people don't understand that, because if people backed it for that specific feature, they're gonna be pissed.
Yeah. That's why, like, I think people need to not sell specific features as much as we're selling the general idea of the game.
Yeah.
But even then, like, it's so hard, because media, consumers, and developers have as a group, have together skewed the Kickstarter situation to the point where everyone treats it like a store, and
and it's a problem because, and if you treat it as a store and projects don't deliver, it becomes an unreliable store, and you are making things harder for any legitimate project as well.
Yeah, and I don't know what the solution is apart from like just every developer making a concerted effort to pull back, media making an effort to like just encouraging developers to be less overpromising in their Kickstarters. And I mean, media has the power to try that. We can try to talk to consumers directly and ask them not to do this all they want. There are too many of them.
Yeah.
We can't convince all of them.
Honestly,
so this has to change from the developer and press side first.
Honestly, let's look at this. Joystick dropped review scores, Eurogamer dropped review scores, some other sites will be dropping review scores. Apparently, there are things that, I mean, PC Gamer held a discussion, I think. It was PC Games, and they held a discussion. What do you think about review scores as well? What's your attitude towards it? People are now considering that, and there's a concerted effort for that. I think that there should be a concerted effort on how to cover early, like, Kickstarter stuff, early game announcements, early access, and stuff like that. Because another byproduct of all of this is that you put in the spotlight so many unfinished games, and then you go on Steam and see a bunch of good games just, they're not noticed. They don't get exposure. They become hidden gems. Like Johnny and I were just talking right now before recording. We were looking through the roguelike curator list on Steam, and I noticed a bunch of games that were released fairly recently while I was still active on Steam, and I just didn't notice them. They just passed me by, and I check Steam every day. And those games aren't getting any coverage because you're too busy covering early access stuff, Kickstarter stuff, and I think the media kind of needs to change this approach as well.
Yeah, I don't know how much else we can cover in this discussion.
No, that's about
circles, but I think that's our take on it. Are we stupid? I don't know, maybe. But like this is our perspectives on the thing. And like again, I don't want to make this into fanning the flames between a Molyneux John Walker drama. I think both of those people are like, I have no personal problem with either of them. I think John Walker mostly tries to do the right thing. And I don't want to try to fan any drama. Not that we're big enough to actually manage that, but I think it's worth saying just in case. And I think it's the Kickstarter discussion that comes out of this that is the interesting one.
Yeah. In the end, this is a much larger problem, and we're putting individuals before the much larger problem, and losing focus. Keep in mind like how Kickstarter is used. Keep in mind how game development works, and like that interview is not as interesting for the interview itself as it is for what it betrays about how we think about things surrounding it. Also be nice to people. Don't call them.
Yeah, seriously. Seriously, I mean, again, we don't have a huge audience, but please don't hound Peter Molyneux or John Walker over this. Like, I think there's been enough hounding of both of them in the wake of this article. I think everyone needs to take a step back and just be calm for a second.
Love everyone, except the stupid people.
Wait, no, no, I can't say that with any honesty.
Well, that's because you're a Swede.
I'm a horrible person. Yes, we're ending this.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.